Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Everything School HQ, the home or future home of 5-Star Edge 2024, Vestavia Hills. Jordan Ross committing to the Vols this week, launching the Vols to the top 6 here on On3's team recruiting rankings, passing I think LSU and A&M here, as the Vols continue their upward climb and stacking blue chippers on blue chippers. And look, it's a big get. It's a name that you would be like, oh, this feels like a Georgia commit. This feels like a Georgia kid. No, not so fast, my friend. Tennessee stacking up the edge guys to get closer and closer to closing that gap against the Georgia Bulldogs. And they're not done yet. We'll see what happens with Chris Cole, Danny Okoye over the next month and some change. But good time, as always, here on Rocky Top. But I'm not alone. Philly University of North Georgia alumni Matt Green is here. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. It is good to be back with you, talking ball, as we do every week before we ramp things up here when the season starts. But yeah, man, not much. Just watching another Braves victory over the Mets, per usual. You know, just it's pretty standard at this point.
I mean, they got blown out last night. I don't know if you want to say that after 10-4 last night, I think is what it ended up being.
I mean, how many yeah, the Mets, it's baseball. Mets get the Mets one here and there, you know, but man, you couldn't have to a better franchise. Gotta feel bad for the New York Mets, huh?
I know. I mean, we're in peak time, like the fall. Like I'm already ready for the weather change and everything else, but we're gonna have college football, NFL, NBA, and Braves playoffs, MLB playoffs, all within the next 2 months happening. It's gonna be a delight. Love the fall. I am so ready for the fall. I'm so ready for so many things to watch and enjoy and react to. And I mean, starting this after this week, we'll be doing 2 shows to recap week 1 and then previewing week 2. So the 2-week shows are right around the corner. Actual games to talk about right around the corner, Matt Green. But speaking of how close we are to college football games being back on our television sets, sir, how many are we now away? How many days, that is? How many days are we away from the return of college football here in 2023?
Obviously, week 0 is just a couple days away, but we are 10 days away from the official first Saturday of college football. You'll get a couple appetizers before then, but that's the real first Saturday, week 1 of college football. And I think the best number 10 of all time got to be Vince Young, right? I don't think you can really get better than Vince Young. RG3, Heisman winner. That's probably the first 2 that pop out of my head. Obviously, Thomas Davis, probably the best number 10 for Georgia. Maybe Eric Zier, going back to the 90s. Obviously, he was one of the Georgia's best quarterbacks. But yeah, who's Jamon Dumas-Johnson, current potential All-American on Georgia's defense, number 10 as well.
Fountain Bauta?
Faton Bauta. Jacob Eason was number 10 for a brief period. Yeah. Quality. He was one of those understandable transfers. You know, no one really holds it against him. Kyrus Jackson. There's been a few number 10s, but 10 days. Well, who's the best Tennessee number 10?
Probably Eric Ainge.
Eric Ainge.
Last quarterback kicked the Vols to the SEC championship game in 2007?
That's true. I was
10's an interesting number. There's a lot of good quarterbacks. It's a very quarterback number, but what's weird this year, and it's gonna catch some folks by surprise, but Elijah Simmons, who was 51 for the last couple of years, he's a defensive tackle for Tennessee. Very, very large human being. Is actually dinged up at the moment. It's going to miss at least the next couple of weeks here. But he's now switched to number 10. Defensive tackle at number 10 is a weird looking number.
No, I'm not a fan of that. You gotta get the big number for the big boys.
Absolutely. Matt Green, CFB preview show. We have predictions, we have hot takes, we have Heisman picks, we have college football playoff picks, we have a national champion pick. We have a lot on the docket here, and I think my picks are going to surprise a lot of folks here. Been thinking about it all week about some of these that I've been stewing over. Didn't even put some of them in our trusty Google Doc because I didn't want you to see them before we started recording this very program, sir. But this is going to be very all over the place with a lot of our favorite stuff because everyone's just chomping at the bit for college football to be here. And week 0 is coming up. Like, I'm going to be the sicko just like everybody here listening, watching Vanderbilt, Hawaii play in front of 4,000 or so over there in Nashville with that that stadium situation. But I'll be watching that
construction site over there in Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be great. Someone had the tweet with I can't wait for the first touchdown at a Vandy game and it was a gif of Leslie Knope in Parks and Rec falling over in the construction site and just
into the pit.
Yeah, that's what might happen here for the first one, but we shall see if that's the case. I mean, Earl Bennett's not lining up in the slot, so I'm not sure how many touchdowns the Doors are going to be dialing up early and often this college football season. But
Earl Bennett,
we'll see. Yeah, it's a good pull. What? Matt Green, this is going to be fun. I'm very excited for this episode and what we're going to touch on here, but I want to leave it to you, sir. Where do you want to go first?
First, we've already been through all our conference predictions, but we'll just recap the listeners on all of our conference predictions. So in the Big 12, I have Texas over Kansas State in the conference championship. You have Texas over Texas Tech. So we're both liking the Longhorns in the Big 12. In the ACC, I have Clemson over North Carolina. You have Clemson over Miami. So we're agreed on the ACC champion. In the Pac-12, I have Oregon over USC. You have Oregon over Utah. So we're agreeing with the Pac-12, ACC, and Big 12 champs this year. In the Big 10, however, I have Penn State over Wisconsin, and you have Michigan over Iowa. And then in the SEC, I have Georgia beating Alabama, and you have Georgia beating Texas A&M. So that's where we sat with our conference predictions to start things off.
Okay. I like it, Matt Green. Well, bold predictions time. I think this is the most fun we can do here. I got my first one.
All right, hit me with it.
Seeing a lot of USC's making the playoffs. Seeing a lot of Washington, CFP dark horse. Seeing a lot of Oregon, CFP dark horse. Seeing a lot of Utah. I mean, Cam Rising needs to get healthy before we walk down that road. And Cam Rising, please get healthy because that Florida line's dropping by the day. So need you to get healthy, Cam Rising, because a Florida loss in Utah to start the year makes the Vols trip to Gainesville a lot more appetizing with that history. And when you look at it, when Florida's unranked and Tennessee plays Florida or just higher ranked, then things have a much better chance of going well for the Vols here. But Matt Green, we're doing this all over again, and I'm tired of it, and I've got to put my foot down. The Pac-12 is missing the CFP again. They're going to cannibalize themselves. They are going to be the most fun conference, I think, by and large this year. The quarterback play should be elite all over the board. I think that we're going to have a lot of amazing games all across the board. Like we already saw, Oregon State was awesome last year. It should be just as awesome this year with a DJ Uiagalelei thrown into the mix. Washington should be just as awesome. That should be Washington, Oregon should be awesome. Look, I think there are going to be a lot of very good teams in this conference. The last hoorah for the Pac-12 before everything falls apart going into the next year. But I don't think they're going to get that Cinderella story once again where they're just going to cannibalize themselves. Their best team's going to be 10-2, 11-2 after a Pac-12 title win, and they're not going to make the playoff. I don't know if it's going to be Oregon. I don't know if it's going to be USC, whoever, but a lot of folks are throwing out the Pac-12 once again to find their way into the college football playoff. But the last year of the 14 playoff, I don't see them making it in. So my bold prediction to start things off here, the Pac-12 will once again cannibalize themselves and find their way on the outside looking in on the last iteration of the 14 playoff.
I don't hate that. I think the Pac-12 is a really strong conference this year, but it's hard to see someone, one of these teams necessarily going through with one loss. So I like that. I like that bold prediction to start things off. My first bold prediction is that Brock Bowers is going to be a Heisman Trophy finalist. And
wow.
I think we all remember back in 1949 when Leon Hart was the last tight end to win the Heisman. No, I just Googled that. I don't even know who he played for. Apparently two tight ends have won the Heisman back in like the 30s and 40s. But Brock Bowers, I think this guy is just an absurd athlete. The things he's able to do, running the ball, and I think it's going to be like a running the ball and obviously receiving. I think it's going to be like a Jordan Davis kind of situation where Georgia's going to do something like Brock Bowers, have like a Philly special type pass. So he'll have one of these like Heisman moment games where he's got a receiving touchdown, a rushing touchdown, and a passing touchdown or something like that. And like, I think he's just, we saw with Stetson Bennett last year, like Stetson Bennett had a great season. Like, don't get me wrong, but I think we all know why Stetson Bennett was a Heisman finalist. It's an overall story of just who he is, obviously, being the quarterback on the number one team in the country, with the team success that goes with it and everything. And obviously, he was a dynamic playmaker, double-digit rushing touchdowns and all that. But it was a team achievement more than anything else. And I think with Brock Bowers, it can almost even be a career achievement that, like, Georgia could be the number one team in the country. He could be on their way to winning a third straight national championship while this guy's in college. And if he continues to do what he does, like obviously he's got to have the stats. And with Georgia's schedule, you kind of wonder if the stats will be there because they might be blowing teams out in the third quarter. But if he's got like a 60 catch, especially if he gets 1,000 yards, like 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns or something like that, and he probably will get over 1,000 yards if he's got a few hundred yards rushing or something like that. So he's got to be multifaceted. But I think Brock Bowers, first tight end since I can remember to be a Heisman finalist.
But if he's a Heisman finalist, what does that mean for the rest of the finalists? And what does that mean for Carson Beck? Does that mean Carson Beck had a mid-year?
No, not at all. I think Carson Beck's got to have a pretty good season for the tight end to be putting up 1,000 yard. I mean, other than the fact Brock Bowers, you could just kind of throw screens to him and he just makes plays. But I think obviously there's a chance that a Kyle Trask situation. Like I feel like Kyle Pitts was the best player on Florida, but he did miss a couple games and the quarterback put up the huge numbers and was the one that got invited. So I think that's definitely a possibility that Beck is a finalist instead of Bowers. But Bowers he's a dude, man. And I think it's like there's an asterisk in there. Like if they really kind of, I think they're going to have to try to do it for him, because I think there's going to be so many games where, you'll see Georgia up 34-14 in the third quarter, and they're just kind of running the clock out like they tend to do. But if they're actually piling it on, and like I said, he's got like a passing touchdown and some rushing stats, I think that's what it would take to get it done.
It's interesting. Who was I guess it's never happened, Georgia having back-to-back quarterback Heisman finalists, right?
No, definitely not. I'm pretty sure Stetson is the first quarterback Heisman finalist Georgia's ever had. I mean, Frank Sinkwich, whatever you want to call him, I think he was like a halfback, whatever, I'm not even really sure what his exact position was in 1942. But I think Garrison Hurst was a Heisman finalist. Like if you look, like in the most recent years, the only guys to even finish top 10 are defensive players. Like Champ Bailey finished, I think, like 7th or 8th in the Heisman. Roquan finished top 10. I think Jarvis Jones maybe even finished top 10. And Jordan Davis finished top 10, obviously. But yeah, so it's been more defensive players than anything. And obviously Garrison Hurst was a finalist, and Herschel won it, obviously.
And then I think what helps Georgia, like Georgia's, when you're the best team, and they've been the best team the last 2 years, I think it's fair to like just assume someone from Georgia is going to be a Heisman finalist, because they should be in the CFP again. They should be one of the 4 best teams. And generally speaking, if you're the best team in college football, you're going to get at least one Heisman finalist here. And Brock Bowers, you can make the case, as you just illustrated here, is going to be the best player on Georgia this year. It's unprecedented waters for him to be meandering through here, but it is a possibility. Like Brock Bowers, I mean, what helps, there's a lot of things too, right? Where it's new quarterback, so he doesn't have the name recognition. He doesn't have, Carson Beck could be good, but he's not like, Stetson Bennett had the electricity and just the narrative, which helps. You need a good narrative to push for the Heisman.
Doesn't hurt.
And I don't think Carson will have that. I mean, it's nice that he stuck around and everything else, but Joe has he stuck around.
That's true. That's a solid story, though. In the era of the transfer portal, this guy waited his turn. He loves UGA or whatever the case, whatever you want to, whatever little storyline thing you want to say. But he worked hard, paid his dues.
Yeah, and if you craft, I think the narrative for how this works for Brock Bowers to end up being a finalist is the running back rotation is legit, because if they all cannibalize themselves, whether it's Paul, Milton, Robinson, whoever, they have to split a lot of characters. That helps. If Dominic Lovett, Lad McConkey, and who am I forgetting?
And probably
Rosemary Jack Saint. They are all solid, but they don't break out. That helps his case. Darnell Washington not being on this roster anymore helps his case. So I think,
although I don't know that Washington ever really hurt. Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if that really ever hurt. I think he hurt Washington's touches more than anything else.
Right, but I just think that there's so much, because I remember the coverage last year is like, we're watching Darnell and what he meant for Georgia as a blocker and what just his size and nature. And it was like, he's underutilized here because there's so much talent at tight end that, like, okay, he would be going crazy and putting up bonkers numbers somewhere else. But because of just how loaded this tight end room is, he's just kind of the forgotten guy, but he was still just as dominant, just in a smaller sample size. But I just don't think Oscar Delp or Lucky Lawson or whoever is going to steal any portion of the spotlight for Brock. And it feels like a lot will be going through him. And I think he'll be fun. I think there is an appetite for one of these guys to eventually break through, because when you look at the NFL now and it's trickling down, guess what? The tight end position is huge. Like, George Kittle's a star. Travis Kelce's a star. Rob Gronkowski, obviously a star. Kyle Pitts for the Falcons, big name. Like, teams are prioritizing the position, and tight ends are basically receivers. Now, you can't really be an elite tight end without having great hands and be an athletic freak. So I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later, just because of how football is continuing to evolve and how that position has evolved. So I like it. I like that one, Matt Green.
All right, what you got next for me?
Here's what I got. This is going to be spicy. Alabama's finishing 8-4, and Nick Saban's retiring.
Oh, wow. What? 8-4. You gonna drop the mic? You gonna elaborate on that?
Here's the thing. Things happen in streaks here. If you go back through the Tennessee Bama history, Bama wins a bunch in a row. Tennessee wins a bunch in a row.
Uh-oh.
Bama wins a bunch in a row. Tennessee wins a bunch in a row. I think anyone who is expecting Alabama to be able to run the ball down Tennessee's throat, Tennessee top 20 rushing defense last year, and they're going to be able to play this kind of style and win. Jalen Milroe is going to put up 50 on Tennessee's defense through the air. They're wrong. Tennessee's winning in Tuscaloosa this year. That's an easier game for the Vols. They were in that game in the beginning of the fourth quarter.
Okay, that's one game. What are the 4 games? What are the other 3?
I'm still going, Matt Green. We're giving him the benefit of the doubt, and that being the greatest college football coach of all time, Nick Saban. They were 19th in passing offense last year with Bryce Young. I think this is going to get so much worse through the year. Notre Dame, you have to keep scrolling, Matt Green, to see where Tommy Rees's Notre Dame fighting average were. They were 98th in passing offense a year ago. Find a Notre Dame fan that was upset about the departure of Tommy Rees. That, like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know where Marcus Freeman's going, where this program's off to. He was all over the place, Nick Saban, in the offensive coordinator search. He went from Washington's OC, Coach Grubb, and what they were doing, their high-powered, Heupel-esque offense, to Tommy Rees and we're going to just say it's the Alabama offense and it doesn't matter who came in, like they're running what Nick, I don't buy it. The quarterback play is going to be an issue. No one's broken through. No one. Guess who still doesn't have playmakers out wide? If you're betting on Jermaine Burton again, Ja'Cory Brooks, Benson, the JUCO kid, they don't have the guys. They don't have the guys at tight end. They don't have the guys out wide. They're going to be able to run the football okay. They're going to be able to play bully ball okay. They should have a top 10 defense. Once again, this is an offensive-driven sport, and things continue to evolve. We talk about Georgia's defense all the time over the last couple of years. Their offense was elite. Their passing offense the last 2 years was elite. They could not win with defense alone. They could win a lot of games. They couldn't win a title. They couldn't beat TCU 65-7 and make them look silly. You couldn't survive the onslaught of Ohio State in the CFP semifinal game without an elite offense. Bama's not going to have an elite offense this year. And the SEC is so dang tough now. And you get Texas, who I think will have an elite offense. You get Tennessee, who's going to have an elite offense. You get LSU, who's going to have an elite offense. You might have to play Georgia in the SEC title game, who's going to have an elite offense. You're going to get A&M on the road, who has Bobby Petrino, 5-star quarterback Connor Weigman, and the best wide receiver trio in the conference on the road in College Station. You lost the last time you were there. That's another potential top 10 offense.
Here's what Hugh Freeze on the road.
Hugh Freeze on the road. I don't think they're a top 10 offense with Peyton Thornton yet, but I do think they're getting.
But he's got the Bama kryptonite though.
Right, Bama. This whole Nick Saban smiling at press conference stuff, it's for the birds. The man's just having fun. Like, he bought the property in Florida. Like, he's just enjoying life. He has nothing to prove. Everything's nice. Maybe that's all it is. He's just got nothing to prove, and he's enjoying his life more because he knows we're nearing the end. Nick Saban's not going to be roaming these sidelines much longer. And I don't think he wants to see his legacy continue to go downward. After last year missing it all, and he's going to get left out of the playoff again, he might finish fourth in the SEC West behind LSU, behind Texas A&M.
And who else? Who's the third?
Oh, I guess he'd be third. Sorry. Sorry, I forgot. I miscounted there.
That was funny. You had me on the edge of my seat. That's bold right there, sir. My bold prediction, like kind of playing off yours, was that we'd have a 2-loss team in the SEC from the SEC West in the SEC Championship. I wasn't going nearly as bold as 8-4 and Saban's retiring. The dynasty's dead. The king is dead. Like,
it's over.
I don't is that the declaration right now that the Bama dynasty's over? Saban's retiring?
I think Tennessee blowing out Bama and Tuscaloosa will be pretty bad. I think losing to A&M and losing to Jimbo again is going to be pretty bad. And then maybe Auburn at home with the upset of the year. They get the signature win in year one for Hugh Freeze. That's the nail in the coffin there.
I forgot to mention this when we were doing our SEC preview last week. That's the saving grace, because I'm basically right there with you that I just with everything you said with these playmakers, they don't have the dudes. Like, obviously some big time freshman running backs are coming in, but like it's hard to know what to expect from some true freshmen. They just don't have the elite weapons outside, and they had Bryce Young, who was just making so many plays and making everybody look so much better, and there's not going to have that this year. The one thing is, though, so many of these big games are at home this year. Like, to think that they're going to lose like 4 games, it's like they losing to LSU, Tennessee, Texas, and Ole Miss all at home. Like, that's
the 4
a bunch
losses.
of big,
Can I give them to you?
and then A&M is on the road, but like the fact that they get all of those big games at home. Like, there's no way they're going worse than like 2-2 in there. Like, when was the last time Alabama lost 2 home games in a season? Like,
this is a tougher schedule though at home. This is a tough home slate.
It is.
The 4 losses.
Who are they losing to?
2 at home, 2 on the road. They're losing at home to Tennessee, and they're losing at home to Texas. They're also losing on the road at A&M, and they're losing on the road to close the year at Auburn.
Losing to Auburn would be brutal for sure. But man, that's bold, sir. That's real bold. I tend to think I kind of interrupted my own thought. I'm with you basically on your critiques of Alabama, but I think with their talent level, I think they can bully ball most of the teams on their schedule. But the shortcomings, like what you said, like Georgia's had an elite defense. You've always had to be great on both sides of the ball. At least be very good. Some combination of good on both sides of the ball. Like there's very few teams that have only one with offense or only one with defense. So you have to be good on both sides. And I think they can typically probably run the ball on most of the teams they play. But Texas, I think Texas is going to be one of those losses. I'm with you on that one because I think Texas, this offense, I just don't think they can keep up with what Texas is able to do offensively. Like we saw what Ewers was doing. Obviously, that was at home versus going into Bryant-Denny Stadium. But I don't know. I think that Texas matchup early in the season before Alabama's really figured out what the quarterback situation is, I think that's a really dangerous game.
I agree. Who's your next big bowl prediction?
So I did not see your prediction about the Iowa Hawkeyes. So I'm going to have a mini prediction about the Iowa Hawkeyes, and I'll let you get into yours.
Okay.
The Iowa Hawkeyes are going to average 25 points per game this year. That is my bold prediction on the Hawkeyes this year. What is your take on the Hawkeyes this year?
You're a big Cade McNamara guy. You're all in on Cade McNamara.
I just know they averaged 17.7 points per game last season. And the fact that they are contractually obligated to get to that 25 points per game, I have a feeling they're going to be able to get some garbage time touchdowns in there to help that number.
Here's the thing. This schedule is awesome. Iowa's a preseason top 25 team. Cade McNamara, playoff quarterback, many forget. Yet Utah State at home. At Iowa State, they're losing a roster member a day to this gambling stuff that's just destroyed this program. They're going to be the worst team in the Big 12 probably. Lose their running back who just left the program, starting leading rusher from last year. Should win the Cy-Hawk Trophy this year. Western Michigan at home. And then at Penn State, tough. But guess who plays Penn State tough all the time? The Iowa Hawkeyes. That's a toss-up game. At night in Happy Valley, it'll be rocking, but it will be quite interesting how that goes. Michigan State at home, Purdue at home.
Is that the whiteout game?
Probably, right?
I'll have to look that up. Keep going.
At Wisconsin, that'll be tough. Minnesota at home, at Northwestern, Rutgers at home, Illinois at home, Nebraska on the road to close this year. This is a 10-2 at worst Iowa season. They are going to walk into 10-2. They are going to walk into 10-2, Matt Green. People need to prepare for the Iowa Hawkeyes to be in the college football playoff conversation in November. That is my bold take, is they're going to be right around the conversation. Everyone's just going to be so focused on the Penn State Nittany Lions, the Ohio State Buckeyes, and the Michigan Wolverines, and rightfully so. 3 top 10 programs. Iowa's going to be right there. You mentioned the offense. I think the offense is going to be somewhere in the 30s. I think there's going to be a nice little improvement there. And then I think they're going to have a top 10 scoring defense again. And that's a recipe for a lot of wins on an easy schedule against some inept offenses, inept teams. And it just requires them to split Wisconsin and Penn State to get to that 11-1, 10-2-ish range where I predicted they would win the West before this season. Matt Green, they're going out with a bang here. And I think Iowa is going to be in the college football playoff conversation late into this season, and it's going to catch a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say what the conversation, because I think they have to be undefeated to be in the conversation. Because
there's a one-loss team that gets it. No,
but if they have
win
one
the Big
loss,
Ten and with one
but
loss,
think about them a couple years ago, or that's probably more than a couple years ago. Or I think they went undefeated. It's like everyone was just waiting for them to lose. It's like, yeah, once you play the Big Ten East champion, you're not going to win. So the Big Ten West has never beaten the Big Ten East. So I think they have to be undefeated for it to even be like, hey, you can't ignore Iowa. They're 9-0 or whatever it might be. But I don't know. I think if they have one loss, they'll be sitting there at number 8, number 9. It'll be like a afterthought. Oh, technically Iowa is still alive. Yeah, don't forget about them. Kind of like Clemson was in last year. It's like, yeah, they're sitting back there with one loss, but no one really thinks they're that good. I think I could see that, like they're up there in the top 10 of the rankings or so in November.
What's your next bold prediction, Matt Green?
I think we already kind of alluded to it with our predictions, but I think Penn State making the college football playoff, winning the Big Ten and making the college football playoff. I think that's with this Ohio State, Michigan world that we live in now, both these teams making the college football playoff a year ago. I think Penn State, I feel like this is the year for James Franklin that it kind of feels like they have everything they need. You're kind of getting Ohio State in a transition year. Obviously, Ohio State is always loaded. If they're the best team in the conference and they go undefeated, that's not going to surprise anybody. But I feel like if there's a year where Penn State, the stars have aligned and they can win this conference, I think this is the year. JJ McCarthy, I think I just need to see improvement from JJ McCarthy because he's the only thing that's holding me back from saying Michigan is probably the best team in this conference. Because I think it's Penn State and Michigan ahead of Ohio State, but I think they all are like 11-1 or 10-2 or something like that at the worst. So they're all going to be up there, but I think Penn State is this is their year. They're going to make the college football playoff.
Wow. Here's the issue with this, Matt Green. Ohio State and Michigan still exist. And your concerns about Michigan, like Edwards and Corum, I just don't think McCarthy matters that much to them. Everyone wants to hype up McCarthy, but I'm like, I think they have the best two-headed running back monster in the sport this year. And we talk about bully ball. Like, they're going to bully. Like, they're going to actually be efficient. They're going to be good, and they're going to run through this conference. Maybe 12-0, 11-1 at the worst here for the Wolverines. I am very curious to see how it ultimately unfolds for Penn State. I think their ceiling's higher because Michigan quietly has a really just kind of... there's a lot of parallels between Michigan and Alabama, actually, for me. But they don't have the dudes out wide. Like, I don't think they're going to be able to win the college football playoff just because they still just don't have the Marvin Harrisons, the Brew McCoys, the Dante Thorntons, just the Jalen Hyatts. They don't have those world beaters on the outside that are going to put fear in a lot of defensive coordinators' minds, even if JJ McCarthy takes a step. I don't think they have those guys. I think they do in the backfield. The offensive line should be good and JJ should be good, but I think I am just not sure they will have the explosion necessary to win 2 playoff games. But I do like the Penn State thing, and if it's not this year, when is it for James Franklin and the Nittany Lions? So
because when it comes to Michigan, I just think they are going to be able to bully just about everybody they play. At least 10 of the teams they play. It just all comes down to the Penn State and Ohio State game. If JJ McCarthy is 2021 Stetson Bennett, Michigan can win the Big Ten. If he's 2022 Stetson Bennett, Michigan can win the national championship. But I don't know. I just don't know that JJ McCarthy is that. He feels very average to me, and I think Michigan will be able to beat everyone they play just by running all over them. But when you get to Penn State, when you get to Ohio State, and those teams that actually do have your same level of talent, that's when the quarterbacks kind of has to elevate the team, and that's what remains to be seen, I think, when it comes to Michigan.
Okay.
But, we saw Ohio State, them breaking those 80-yard runs in the fourth quarter, so maybe they're just able to bully Ohio State and Penn State, and they go undefeated again. But I'm skeptical. Give me the Nittany Lions, James Franklin.
My last bold prediction, Matt Green. I think Colorado's in for a really rough transition here. We know about all the transfers, the 60-plus kids coming into this program. We've talked about the schedule. I think the schedule is just terrible. To open with TCU, team who is just in this college football playoff with this many new faces and whole new staff. I mean, I think there's a lot of they could be spicy. Like Colorado, who wants to play Colorado? Shedeur Sanders could be really good right away. And he very well could. Former 4-star, had options, went to Jackson State, put up big numbers. We'll see. Travis Hunter looks like a dude. Like Cormani McClain, they have the last 2 top overall corners in the high school classes here. That's all great.
So they got good cornerback play.
They do have good cornerback play, Matt Green. Unfortunately, you look at the rest of the roster, a lot of USF guys, some Kent State guys, a lot of just they're not quite there. And then I was peeking at the 2024 class. Colorado's not in the top 10. They're not in the top 15. They're not in the top 20 right now. Maybe that can change at the end here. I'm not sure this is going to just be this avalanche takeover from Dion and company this year. I like the staff. I like Dion. I think this is still just a worthwhile move for the Buffs, but I think this looks like a 3-9 team. So I think they're actually going to be kind of bad, especially defensively right away this year. I think the offense and the tempo will help them a lot, and I think the offense will be okay. But Shedeur Sanders, I think, is going to go through growing pains in this conference. The Pac-12 is brutal. We've talked about how tough this conference is going to be, especially in the top half. My gut tells me this is going to be a pretty terrible record year for Colorado. Not 1-11, but I think a lot of folks think they're going bowling or going to be flirting with the bowl game, and I don't think they have the schedule. I'm nervous about the turnover. I think the defense is still going to be pretty bad, and I think they're a year or two away from making this all work. And it takes time to build a program, and to flip it like this, and the kind of dudes that they're going to have in a really tough conference this year, I think they're going to go 3-9. I think it's going to catch a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, you probably won't find many teams that are playing 11 Power 5 opponents on their schedule either. Like with TCU and Nebraska, obviously Nebraska's no juggernaut or anything, but just from what teams are, it's instead of playing Northern Arizona, they're playing Nebraska at a conference. So it's definitely a bigger challenge. So yeah, I'm with you there. The Pac-12's tough. They also have a Friday night game at Washington State. So probably like one of the lesser teams. You're getting like those weekday road games that are always tricky. So like, I don't know, the Pac-12 is going to be tough. I can get with you on that one.
All right, Matt Green. Well, you have some stats for me here on top 10 ranked, unranked, and this, that, and the other. So explain to the good folks what you found here.
This, that, and the other. Yes, sir. Been doing some math, some Googling, if you will. And teams that start preseason top 10 and then finish the season unranked is just a lot more common than you might think. So the last few years, we had 3 different teams. We had Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Baylor. All 3 of those teams started top 10, finished unranked. Go back to 2021, Texas A&M again. Iowa State and North Carolina were all preseason top 10. Finished season unranked. 2020, LSU, Penn State, Oregon all started preseason top 10. Finished season unranked. And then you go back to 2019, Texas was the only one that started top 10. But you see multiple teams every year. So if we had to pick 3 teams in this year's, if you want to go by the AP or the coaches, who do you think are the candidates of these top 10 teams that could finish the season unranked this year?
Oof. Let me pull it back up. I think Southern Cal we talked about, where if the defense is really bad and they get 9-3, 8-4 potentially, I think they're a candidate. I think Alabama 8-4. Could they be one of those preseason fallout teams? This would be spicy.
Now that would be the hottest take. Even if Alabama's 8-4, do they keep them in the top 25 because they're Alabama? Like, I don't even know.
Washington, if Michael Penix gets injured again, I think that's something to keep in mind. Is like, what if he doesn't stay healthy this year and he gets banged up like he did a couple years ago at Indiana? Their preseason top 10, does that unravel their year? Potentially. And then I think the other one I would throw out is probably Florida State, because a lot of folks are ready for them to make that jump. It's a tough schedule, and I think there's a path, a very easy path to them being 8-4 and maybe not being a top 25 team by season's end, especially if you close the year with a loss at Florida.
I'm with you completely. I think Penn State is obviously a team that did this a couple years ago, but I'm high on the Nittany Lions, so I'm not picking them. LSU is one that, like, I'm not as high on LSU as most people are, like, especially Jaden Daniels. I was looking at him the other day, and I think he's second right now in Heisman odds. And, like, this guy, he just feels like an athletic game manager to me, like, which is really good. And I think, like, kind of what Jalen Hurts is, if you will, at the NFL level. Like, he isn't necessarily the reason the Eagles are what they are, but he's athletic, and they just have a solid offense around him. And obviously Jalen Hurts is good, and Jaden Daniels is good. But I think there's a chance that he's just kind of average, and LSU gets into some of these 20-17 type of games, 17-13 type of games, and they have to win with their defense. And I think they're a team that's capable of winning with their defense. And I feel like Brian Kelly is just one of the best coaches in college football. And so I think there's definitely a chance they take the year 2 jump, but they're one that, like, with this SEC West schedule, if Florida State is as good as some people think, like, that's obviously a tough game out of conference. Like, they're one that I'm not picking, but they're a candidate that you don't necessarily know what their floor is.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm with you on LSU, and you're going to see why.
Florida State is definitely my number one, though, because I'm not sold on Florida State with how they finished the season a year ago. And then if you're going by the coaches poll, I think Tennessee is definitely a candidate to go 8-4, or maybe even like a 7-5 if something goes wrong in Gainesville, Florida. Like, I think if they lose to Florida in the swamp early on, it's not that they can't bounce back from that. It's a tough road atmosphere, but I wonder how that could kind of set the tone for their season moving forward, because obviously you still got Alabama, you still got Georgia, you still got Texas A&M on the schedule. Like, Tennessee's schedule is not easy. So I think that Florida game in the swamp is one early that I feel like is kind of a barometer for Tennessee, because I don't really know what their floor is necessarily either.
That's fair. We'll get Tennessee, Matt Green. We'll get to him. Coaches under the most pressure here, sir. I think this is going to be fun. How do you want to do this? And we'll end this discussion on which coach we think will be the first one fired here. But of the group, when you were looking through the coaches under the most pressure going into this year, let's go from 3 to 1.
So I kind of have 2 tiers.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
So I have a first tier
Matt
of
wants
coaches
a lot of people fired. This
under
man
pressure,
has
but they're
tiered.
not all. No, see, none of these. I don't think any of these are really hot seats. Maybe I would say maybe 1 or 2 of these guys could actually be fired this year. But I think when you're talking the most pressure this year, the top 4, I think it's Steve Sarkisian, Ryan Day, Mike Norvell, and Jimbo Fisher. I think Jimbo Fisher is the only. Ryan Day could conceivably be fired, like, because Ohio State, maybe they'll go crazy about losing to Michigan for a 3rd straight year or something. I don't think Ryan Day should be fired by any means, but that's like the one that's like Sarkisian's not getting fired. It's year 3. He's not getting fired this year, but Sarkisian's the one that's under a lot of pressure, because this feels like, especially going into the SEC next year, like, Texas wants to get off on the right foot. Like, maybe you also kind of view it as like, this is our last chance to win with like a weak schedule. Like, we really need to take care of business this year, but we just want to be confident that we're going in the SEC and like we're actually gonna be able to compete. Like, if we're losing to Kansas State and TCU and Oklahoma State, like, what are we gonna do when you gotta play LSU and Alabama and Georgia? Like, it's not a good sign. So I feel like Sarkisian is just under a lot of pressure to actually be a playoff contender, maybe even be a playoff team this year, for Texas fans to be like truly satisfied.
That's fair. Mike Norvell is actually my number 1. Like, Sark, I don't think is in jeopardy, and I think obviously with being year 3, like the quarterbacks in that quarterback room and just the talent across the board, I'm pretty bullish on the Horns going into this year, so maybe that's part of it for me. And you and I both being kind of dubious and selling a little bit on the Seminoles, maybe being a little bit ahead of schedule here. Still, I think it's Norvell, because I think unfortunately now a lot of folks like are expecting him to beat LSU in back-to-back years, which would be pretty crazy if he's able to pull it off. But it's a tough schedule. You got to go to Clemson. I think if you're a Florida State fan, it just depends on how you're viewing the season, and I wonder how this administration is going to view this season. But Mike Norvell has had low expectations because of where that program was and what kind of shape it was in when he took it over. And he's a good coach, and he's got them moving in the right direction. But I think there is just such a strong possibility that they find themselves 8-4. And I just think I wonder what that means for the fan base if they start to get restless of if he's going to be the guy that just kind of navigates them through the tough waters, and then they get the next guy who's the guy, or if he breaks through and proves that he's the long-term answer. In Tallahassee, I would say there's a couple other ones that kind of I had jotted down that I thought were pretty interesting going into this year. I think Dino Babers needs to have a good, strong year. I think because he's been so, I mean, it just feels like he's gone 3-8, 3-9, 4-8 more often than not. But like he has these runs, and I think Syracuse is obviously an extremely difficult job. Garrett Schrader, year 19 in college for him. I think they need to have another bowl season. I think they need to just show that last year wasn't a fluke. So I think it's a big year for Dino and Syracuse. I think it's also kind of a sneaky year for where I just lost him. Where did the list go? Where did he go? Okay, why am I cannot find it for a second.
You need me to give my second tier?
Oh, Jimbo was obviously the other one. I
Yeah.
was going to throw Jimbo was the other top two with Norvell. Give me your second tier while I try and Mel Tucker was the other one. I don't think Mel Tucker's going to get fired. But that 4.5 line for the Spartans coming into this year, you were already not bowling last year. The Big Ten's adding USC and UCLA next year. They're in Washington and Oregon. 4 programs better than you right now. You're already slipping past the big 3. I just wonder, because football is important in East Lansing. They've won a Big Ten title. They've had big time success with Nick Saban and Mark D'Antonio in the past. Like I wonder how hot his seat gets if they finish 3-9 again this year, and they're a really bad defense and the offense is a mess. Peyton Thorne out the building, best receiver out the building. I think Mel Tucker is a sneaky one to watch too.
Yeah, and I think the difference between Mel Tucker and Jimbo Fisher is I think the money actually matters to Michigan State. No, they're not firing him for like at least 3 or 4 more years, like until that buyout's a little smaller. A&M might actually pull the plug just because they got the money to eat the buyout.
Okay. I like it.
But my second tier, I have James Franklin, Billy Napier, Mario Cristobal, and Kirk Ferentz. I don't know if Kirk Ferentz will ever be will be like under pressure because he just can kind of do whatever he wants up at Iowa. But it feels like things are kind of getting restless. And if they have another 17 point per game type of season, I think you might want to see a change if you're an Iowa fan, even though you're like a Phil Fulmer situation. Love what you've done for us, but the past is in the past and we need to move on. I could see kind of that situation in Iowa. Obviously, we've already talked about him, and you're pretty high on him this year. Napier is a guy I don't feel like should be under pressure, but it's University of Florida, and like if there's just pressure to see progress, I feel like. I think if this team wins 7 or 8 games, not every Florida fan will be, okay, this is the right guy, we're moving in the right direction. But if this team misses a bowl game, like they don't do that at Florida, right? A 6-7 followed by a 5-7 or something like that, 4-8 or something. Like if they're actually really bad, I think there's a chance he's on like a serious hot seat by year 3.
I mean, that's fair. I think that's more than fair. First coach fired.
Sorry, last one was Franklin. I just feel like James Franklin's under like a Kirby Smart type of pressure from 2021. It's like no hot seat pressure, but like nationally, if he wants to prove he's like legit, it feels like this is the year to prove the haters wrong.
That's fair. Matt Green, first coach fired. I think we're going to have the same first coach fired here. You want to say it at the same time?
Maybe. Just go for it.
Neal Brown.
Neal Brown, exactly. That's funny. That was the first one I had.
It's going to be Neal Brown. They're going to be bad. West Virginia seemed like they wanted to. They didn't end up biting the bullet here and firing him. They just had to replace. They might have to hire football and basketball at the same time. 2 most important revenue sports at the university with Bob Huggins' resignation and now having to go with a interim coach this year. So they're going to have to find a new head basketball coach and probably a new head football coach. Maybe that's good for the new AD, is to have that continuity and make your own big stamp hires here as they enter a loaded Big 12 going into next year. But I think the Mountaineers are not going to be good enough to save Neal Brown's job. He's calling plays, I think, again though, so maybe that helps. But I have my doubts. This feels like a 4-8, 3-9 team.
Yeah, I think so. And it's kind of just West Virginia's just not a joke of a football program. So this isn't the kind of team that's just going to put up with being bad year after year. So yeah, I'm with you. Neal Brown was definitely the first one I had. The next one I got Jeff Hafley. Boston College is just it's honestly, there's a lot of guys, it feels like, going through these conferences in like their first, second, third years, like just a lot of new coaches at a lot of new places. And Jeff Hafley, we've kind of seen it, what Boston College is. It's kind of the same with West Virginia. Like, this team has made like 3 or 4 ACC championships. Like, they've been a good football program, and that's just not what they've been over the last few years. So they're a team I don't necessarily see things getting better this year.
I would say the dark horse is Dana Holgerson. Like, they underachieved mightily last year. I think they could be bad again this year. I just wonder, when you're jumping into the Big 12, like, do you want to just get off to this start? Because I think Houston's kind of a sleeping giant. Their basketball program, obviously one of the best in the country, a lot of talent in the state of Texas. I think they could do better than Dana Holgerson at this point. I think he's one to monitor this college football season. If Houston makes a big splash and it's like they move on from Holgerson, and I don't know who the name would be, who they might go after, but I would keep that one in my back pocket of like Houston being a dark horse, first coach fired.
You know, who's a dark horse to me is Eli Drinkowitz. Like,
oh, wow.
They've gotten some 5-star recruits, since they're obviously recruiting well and everything. But like, I think a lot of us kind of believe this has something to do with the Missouri State NIL law, like not necessarily, and these players being from the state of Missouri. Like, it's not like you're going and this isn't the Robert Kimdichie Ole Miss class or anything. Mm-hmm. But obviously, you've landed a couple good players. But you look at their schedule, like Kansas State and Memphis out of conference. Like, Memphis isn't just like a pushover of an out of conference team playing in St. Louis for whatever reason. Those two teams, but they play LSU this year from the West, and like Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, and Arkansas, and then South Carolina even before that. Like, this team, it's hard to find a lot of wins, and obviously the recruiting is good, but like, I don't think you can keep a guy around just because the recruiting is kind of good when they're not winning games. Like, I think if this team goes 2-2 at a conference, like, there's a chance they only win 3 or 4 games this year. Like, I think there's this Missouri schedule is not very easy. Like, especially with what Kentucky could potentially be. I think, I don't know. I think Missouri could be in for a bad season.
I have no idea what to make of Missouri, but I just think it's so crowded in the East, in the middle tier, with South Carolina, Kentucky, and maybe Florida, that I don't know where to place Missouri. Like, I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
In the middle.
I feel like Kentucky is the best one of that group.
I would agree.
But I think the rest of those, yeah, you could tell me any particular order they finished in, and I would believe you. I
agree with that. This is going to be fun. Heisman finalists, Matt Green / winner. You're going to do two. Well, we already know. You spoiled the Bowers thing. I want to do the Heisman winner.
I'll give you. So my finalists here, I'm just going to give you the finalist. Caleb Williams, Quinn Ewers, Brock Bowers, and the winner will be, of the 10-3 North Carolina Tar Heels, Drake May.
Oh, wow.
This guy is going to put up stupid numbers, and if North Carolina is good, they don't have to be number 1. They don't have to be like top 5 or anything. But if they have like a good season, and like you've seen Robert Griffin III, we've seen these guys 10-3 teams or so. Like, we saw Caleb Williams a year ago do it on his team. It was like a good team, not great. So if North Carolina is respectable, like a top 15 team, and Drake May, he's going to be this offense. Like, running the ball,
number?
They're going to be
10 wins total?
If they get to 10 wins?
Like, can he win the Heisman at 9-4? How many wins
9-4 is tough, because I don't know if they get to the comp.
Yeah.
I'm thinking 10 wins just because that guarantees you're getting the ACC championship. If you go 10-2 and then lose the ACC championship 10-3, Like I think that's.
So does he need to make the ACC title game for you?
North Carolina had a really good season.
So he under this
maybe
scenario,
not for me, but for the.
I mean, are you doing it? Are you putting North Carolina in the ACC title game?
Sorry, say that again.
Are you putting North Carolina in the ACC title game?
I did. I got Clemson beating North Carolina in the ACC championship.
Okay. I like it. I mean, if that's
it checks. It checks with my. It's consistent with my predictions.
Yeah. Okay. I'll allow it. Matt Green. Here's my 4. Carson Beck.
Ooh.
Connor Weigman.
Ooh. Bold.
Caleb Williams.
Okay.
He's like, okay.
Who's winning it?
That's fine. Connor Weigman's winning the Heisman this year.
Did you have one more finalist? I thought you said 4 finalists.
That's fine. I'll just go with the 3. Connor Weigman's winning the
Connor
Heisman.
Weigman. Wow.
Connor Weigman's winning the Heisman. Former 5-star.
That's bold right there.
He's got all the talent. Bobby Petrino's had some Heismans. Shout out to Lamar Jackson. He has a history. The track record's there. If he's handed the keys, Connor Weigman has all the talent. Do you remember what he did against Louisiana State? Against those LSU Tigers? The last time we saw Connor Weigman with a bad offensive staff, he was efficient. He was good. He diced up a top 10 team. I think Connor Weigman is due because it's like, I'm not saying he's going to have like a Bryce Young type impact for the Aggies, but I think Connor Weigman is going to be a star in college football by the end of this year. I think he is going to be one of the biggest names. He is going to be leading a top 10 offense, a gigantic fan base, and the number 1 conference. Everyone's got eyes on Jaden Daniels. This is where I pivot. I don't think it's Jaden Daniels who ends up getting all those votes and becoming a finalist. I think LSU's going to be really good, probably 9-3, 10-2. I think A&M's going to be better, and I think Connor Weigman is going to be the guy finding all these stud receivers all over the place and putting up big-time numbers on a good team with an elite defense that is going to be contending for the college football playoff. It's a recipe for Connor Weigman. We've seen A&M quarterbacks win this award before, Matt Green, and it's going to happen again. It's Connor Weigman is my Heisman winner.
We've seen Jimbo quarterbacks win it before as well. It's funny. I feel like I'm like lukewarm on all the same predictions as you. Like I'm with you. Like Alabama's taking a step back, but you're going way back. I'm not going that far back. Like I'm with you. I like A&M. They're going to be really good offensively, but I'm not like Heisman winner, like winning the West, like you are. But Connor Weigman, that's bold right there, man. I thought you were going to go Bo Nix, to be honest.
They're not going to win enough. I like Bo Nix wouldn't surprise me. I'll also say it's either Corum or Edwards. One of the Michigan running backs is the other finalist.
See, but I think you just said it. It's Corum or Edwards. You can't split it. That'll keep them out. It'll be like Corum will have like 1,200 yards and Edwards will have like 1,000. Maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. is a good call to throw in there. He's definitely a dark horse.
Now, the biggest shocker of them all, our final big prediction here on this very show, Matt Green. Our college football Final Four national champion predictions. This is going to be big. I'm glad you're sitting down, Matt Green. I hope the listeners are sitting down in their car on their morning commute here on a Wednesday. You got to go first. You want me to go first? You got to go first here.
So first of all, the 1 seed, I don't know if they're going to be seeded this way, but I got Georgia. They're going to win the SEC, get in the playoff. Then I got the Penn State Nittany Lions winning the Big Ten. They're going to get in the playoff. So the last, I'm going to rewind. 2021, we saw 2 first-time teams make the playoff. Last year, we saw 1 first-time team make the playoff. This year, we're getting 2 more. We got Penn State making their first playoff, and then we got the Big 12 champions, the Texas Longhorns, are going to make the playoff. And then the ACC champion Clemson Tigers are going to make the playoff. And no Alabama, no Ohio State, no Michigan, no Oklahoma. We're getting some new blood in this college football playoff. Obviously, Clemson and Georgia have been there a bunch. But Georgia, Texas, Penn State, and Clemson. You want me to give you the champion?
Yeah.
Georgia beats Clemson in the national championship. Three straight national championships for the Georgia Bulldogs. I think, I guess that's the bold prediction of all bold predictions is Georgia winning 3 straight national championships. And then Kirby just give him the crown as the greatest coach in the history of college football.
You saved it all for the very end. You've been very safe with all your takes, and you saved it for the end, Matt Green.
I was being safe picking the preseason #1 team to
they never
run the
win.
table and go all the way.
They never win.
They have won. They
Twice,
don't always
like
win.
20 years. It's pretty rare.
I mean, it's pretty rare to have a team built like the Georgia Bulldogs are in the 2020s era. This is the decade of the Bulldogs. Go for 3-23.
Oh God, let's hope not. I like it though. So Matt Green,
not a homer pick at all. Ignore the flags in the back.
There might be some homers picks here. My 4, Matt Green. #1, Clemson Tigers. I think they go undefeated in the regular season again. I think they find their way to the playoff. They're one of my 4. #2.
I think, I think Riley just. I think
Klubnik's a dude. Will Shipley's a dude.
A complete 180 of this offense. Yeah, I think Clemson's going to be what we're used to seeing them. And then Dabo can get all excited about how they do things the right way and don't go to the portal and stuff.
Exactly. Marvin Harrison Jr. and that receiving core is just too good to be kept out again. I think Ohio State, it doesn't matter if it's Devin Brown or Kyle McCord, I think they find their way back. And they bounce back. They don't lose to Michigan 3 straight years. I think they beat Michigan, beat Iowa in the Big Ten title game, and they find their way back to the college football playoff.
Okay.
2 teams make it in from the SEC once again, Matt Green. On one side, the Texas A&M Aggies win the SEC outright this year. They get 1 regular season loss on their schedule.
Didn't we just make our predictions? Did you have A&M winning the conference?
I changed it, Matt Green.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
I changed it for this. I can do it. It's my show. Has my name on it. A&M.
Oh boy, I can see where this is going.
A&M 1 loss to the Tennessee Volunteers the week after they beat Bama at home for the 2nd time in 3 years. They get a rematch against the Tennessee Volunteers in the college football playoff because, Matt Green, Tennessee beats Georgia at home and finds their way into the SEC championship game this season.
So how does this even happen? Because A&M plays Tennessee this year.
Yes, they do.
So who wins that game?
So Tennessee wins in the regular season. That's their only regular season loss for the Aggies.
So
they go undefeated in the West.
Texas A&M only loses to Tennessee.
Yes.
Beats everyone else, beats Georgia in the SEC championship.
Yes.
So Georgia...
No. Hold on. In the SEC title game. No, Matt Green. Not so fast, my friend.
You're saying Tennessee's in the SEC title game?
Tennessee is in the SEC title game.
Oh,
Tennessee
my goodness.
makes it in to the title game, and they get a rematch against the A&M Aggies.
So what? So Tennessee's going undefeated this year?
No. Tennessee's going to get 1 loss.
But that's the only way they get into the playoff. They had to go undefeated and then lose.
No, they're going to get in either way. They're going to get in with
You're just talking crazy now.
To the Texas A&M Aggies in a rematch game in Atlanta. That's going to be Tennessee. They lose to a team they've already beaten once. The committee can't keep them out because they have beaten the A&M Aggies earlier in the year. They're tied 1-1 in this matchup. They both get put in the college football playoff.
Jeez, where are you going with this?
And then, Matt Green, you get A&M versus Clemson in round 1. You don't want to do Tennessee Clemson again. So they separate them there. And then you get Tennessee, Ohio State, the biggest ratings game of the year outside of Georgia. The two elite offenses, the two best offenses in the sport, two of the best offensive minds in the sport. We get Joe versus Kyle McCord, Marvin Harrison versus Brew McCoy. Just fireworks all over the place on New Year's Eve. Unfortunately, the Ohio State Buckeyes come out on top. And the Ohio State Buckeyes beat the Tennessee Volunteers.
So you're reining in at least snapping back to reality a little bit, I see. I thought we were doing a serious podcast here, and you're over here just talking nonsense.
Not nonsense.
Just talking crazy. So for your prediction to be right, Tennessee has to go 12-0.
Yeah.
That's the only, and then they lose to A&M in the conference championship.
No, they can go 11-1 and make it in, and then lose in the SEC title game and go 11-2 and make the playoff.
No, they're not getting in, losing second loss in the conference title game.
Yes, because they beat A&M in the regular season. They're getting in.
But then they would have had to lose. Who's the other loss to?
Might
they
be
had
Alabama.
To lose to Alabama.
Might be Florida. Might be an upset.
Losing to Florida and getting to the college football playoff.
Crazier things have happened, Matt Green. So they're getting in. I don't think they're going undefeated. I do think they're going 11-1 in the regular season, though. I do think the Volunteers are going 11-1. And then you get Ohio State, Texas A&M in the college football playoff final, and the A&M Aggies beat the Buckeyes in a thriller, and the Aggies and Jimbo gets ring number 2, and the Texas A&M Aggies with their Heisman winning quarterback, top 10 defense, top 10 offense, wins the college football national championship this season.
Oh my goodness. I don't even know what to do with that. Texas, this is just the year of the Aggies. They're getting the national championship and the Heisman. Like, okay, man. That's bold. That's the boldest prediction of the night right there. I don't know about that. I would bet a lot of money against A&M winning the national championship this year. I think they're going to be good, but with the schedule they have, like that's I don't know. That's a lot of assumptions to think that they could. A lot of things aligning too. I think. I don't know. I don't see it.
They're one of the 12 teams in the blue chip ratio. Top 5 team, talent wise. Best receiver room in the conference. One of the best offensive minds. It's all right there. It's all sitting right there for the Aggies. They just have to. They have to take it. And I'm betting on the Aggies. I'm going bold here. Everyone wants to throw LSU. That's not that bold. See, my thing is like everyone's throwing LSU as their sleepy title team pick. Some big college football analysts have picked LSU to win the national title this year. It's wise to stay within the conference. Most of the national championships outside of Ohio State for a little blip have come from the state of Louisiana, Georgia, Alabama, and Florida and South Carolina. It seems like a certain region wins the national title more than anybody else. And if I'm going against Georgia in a three-peat in the history there, going against any of the Florida teams being close, going against Clemson being able to have the guys to run the gauntlet, going against LSU having the dudes in year 2 for Brian Kelly to make that kind of jump, the next talent pool that has the horses to make that kind of push. A lot of people want to throw the Longhorns in there. I'm going the Aggies. I don't think it's that bold when you really break it down that way and where the talent pool is, where things can align. I'm going Texas A&M to win it all. Matt Green. And apologies to your brother who drove off the road 5 minutes ago and just had to go take a second to himself to recalibrate what just happened on this podcast.
In your scenario, I don't see a way that Georgia loses one game and is left out of the college football playoff for a 2-loss Tennessee team.
Tennessee beats Georgia in this scenario.
But I think that second loss, I think the committee takes that into account. The back-to-back national champions just lose one game. As you especially think about it, the preseason number 1 team.
All right, how about this? We lose to Georgia at home. You go to the SEC title game, and then you lose to A&M.
See, Tennessee's I think that's the scenario where Tennessee can get in, is where they have one
we'll do
loss.
That then for this. Fine. We'll do that.
Yeah, that
11-1 on the record for Tennessee, and they do make the playoff.
Yeah, and then maybe Georgia has one loss, and then the SEC championship is their second loss in that scenario. That's where Tennessee could get in there. I mean, it's bold. We'll see. That's a way to end the the prediction show. That's for sure.
We have actual games to talk about next week, Matt Green. We will be previewing week 1 on this very show next Wednesday. So look out for that on this very feed. I'm so excited. The Pick'em is back, Matt Green. Betting odds, Pick'em, straight up, all that. As I look to go back to back in the Pick'em pool championships here, as I built a pretty sizable lead last year. Never look back.
I don't have the data in front of me, but I don't think that's true. I think you may have won overall. I'm pretty sure against the spread, I was the winner there. Let's look at the data. I'm winning the people money, so I think that's what the people
money.
really
I'm just
care
gonna win
about.
the things that matter. The games that were decided on the field. I'm looking at the final score, Matt Green, and that's what the people want. For that guy down there in Tequila, Georgia, Matt Green, my name is Chase Thomas, and that is it for this very show. Come back tomorrow. New episodes on this very feed each and every day, so look out for that. Matt Green, always a pleasure, and I will talk to you next week.
Yes, sir.